Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and Jay Shalansky.
What is this guy doing here?
Hey, everybody. I'm just being me.
So yeah, Jay is Jay, tell us about yourself. Let's
Who are you?
Bio.
Well, I'm a Cancer. I like long walks on the beach and unicorns and the color periwinkle.
You mean Cancer like the astrological sign, not the disease, right?
That was
it
a
depends
weird
on
thing
who
to
you
open
ask.
with.
Depends on who you ask. But yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, Zach is not with us tonight. He is he's gonna take a break from the cast for a bit. He's got 2 young kids and he wants to spend more time with them. So it's nothing nefarious or anything. That is actually the reason. So so we wish him the best. He will still be around the Legion community attending events and stuff. So anyway.
Hey man, when your family calls, you got to answer it, right? Like
absolutely.
That's just what
totally.
it is.
So,
So,
we do this for fun. We're talking about little plastic space dudes.
Right.
So
So I'm here.
So we got Jay.
Yep. This is the episode where Nick Fury walks in and is like, "Hey, get your crap together, guys."
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like at this point, do you guys have enough new audience that I have to actually properly introduce myself? Do you think that's a thing?
I think that it probably wouldn't hurt.
I think it would help.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am the, I guess, host of the Fifth Trooper podcast, which is we used to call them sister podcasts, but now I'm just doing a beginner's guide to Legion podcast. So many of you who are listening to this may not have listened to our other cast because you guys are all experts now by listening to these guys, I'm sure. So so I do that. I contribute sometimes to the blog when I'm feeling up to it, not very often. And then, if you've been to our website, fifthtrooper.com, any of the custom products that we do, I do all the art and design for. So that's me. Oh, and if you bought anything from us, there's a solid chance I shipped it as well. So.
By solid, he means 100% chance, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Jay is the Fifth Trooper. That's literally your handle on the Discord, and it's not super misleading. So
yeah.
Well, thank you. But for those of you who don't know, I have played competitively in a number of LVOs. 2 to be is the number. And then also the thing is, I come from a pretty competitive area of the world as far as the local scene. So we get a lot of the guys up here are very competitive and so so that's kind of my pedigree, if you will.
Back in 2019, Jay was like, "Hey, there's this guy at our local store, Luke Cook. He's really good." And we're like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't know who that is."
He's like, "I think he's amazing."
Yeah.
And we're like, "Yeah, you're full of it." And here we are.
I'm pretty sure I told Mike he's the best player I've seen, and Mike was like, sure he is. So my claim to fame is second degree friends.
Clearly that was before High Command and the World Championships. So anyway, we are going to talk today about, we're going to continue rolling through the slots. Today is a big one because there are actually 7 units to talk about in this slot. It is the Rebel Commander slot. So this one, we'll see if this is like, we might have to split this one up. We'll see how much progress
it's possible.
we're making.
It's very possible. So before we, go for it. You say it.
Well, I was gonna first ask if you had any housekeeping, and then after that, we have some Invader League updates.
So I was gonna say, now that Jay is here, Jay can do housekeeping.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess I generally send that to you guys, don't I?
Yeah, because I think Jay, while I definitely am involved in just about everything we're doing these days, Jay definitely has an idea of exactly what is new this particular week, as opposed to what may or may not be happening behind the scenes. So,
All right.
yeah.
Sure, I can handle that. Well, I'm on the Notorious Scoundrels now, just a little, little part. Let's see what else. If you guys are interested in sidebars, we are legitimately selling out of the limited art ones. So you may want to get in on that now if you've been holding off. So any of the 4 faction ones, they're looking to come in about late May is when they're going to be in my hands, and I'll be shipping them out as soon as I get them. So if you want in on those 4 faction sidebars, do it now. Let's see what else. Next month we got some new products we're going to be launching next month. Little spoiler here, you guys may get a shot at some new order tokens next month. So keep an eye out for that. And then, as always, if you wanted to listen to some behind the scenes podcast of Mike and I getting super salty about not just Legion but everything really in life, you could come join us on After Dark on our Patreon. So like, even if you just did the like $2 a month, you get the podcast for free over there, and any other updates that we do. So yeah, so that's what's going on with us right now.
Yeah, our latest After Dark episode is awfully spoilery too, so should check it out if you have it available.
Yeah, so I'll tease a little bit. I won't talk exactly because you gotta go listen to it, but I'll say on After Dark we definitely are a lot more open because our Patreon members are supporting us and providing us with their hard-earned cash, so we give them a little bit of a peek behind the curtains of what we're working on at Fifth Trooper and what's going on. So if you're interested in that and you want to support us and help us keep going with these podcasts and everything that we're doing, Patreon.
Yep, and that supports the blog and such too. So
yeah.
All right, well, Mike, you played the bronze match in Invader League this last weekend against Timbo and his saber tank. You want to talk about that real quick?
I did, and I have to open with an apology, because apparently, sometimes I say things and they just kind of come out of my mouth, and like, yeah. So in any case, apparently, I called Timbo's List uninspired a podcast or 2 ago,
No.
and I just want to explain what I meant by that, and that I did not mean any ill offense. He brought it up like halfway through our game, and I was like, oh, that kind of sounds mean. And that was definitely not my intention. So, I mean, it's definitely like he's doing a unique thing. It was creative. What I meant was I didn't think it had a ton of firepower in it past the tank. And I think that that's sort of tough to deal with in a lot of matchups. I actually think that sort of played out in our game. But it actually ended up being a lot scarier than I thought it was going to be. So I was kind of like, I get it now. And so I was able to win. I think that he put his evaporator on top of a building, which allowed me to basically take that clankers and know that I was going to have a target like 100%. And we talked about it after the game, and I think he had his reason for doing it was like pretty reasonable. We were on an awkward map. There was only 2 lanes the tank could physically fit down, and it couldn't fit down the middle lane. So he was trying to force me to pick a lane so that he could basically shove his saber tank in it and then take standbys so that I like couldn't engage him properly. And that worked. He definitely got me in a lane where like he had a bunch of my dudes in the open and stuff. But I was able to take that clanker as a dude off the evaporator, and sort of seal the deal. He had to get aggressive with the tank, and Rex popped a fire support shot into the tank that did 6 damage, which was pretty silly. So suffice to say, we played Vaps, and I was able to scope a unit, fall back, and he wasn't able to make up the points. So it was a good game. I do think that like I don't know, my Invader run this season was I actually have an article I'm gonna release about it this week. It was fun for the most part. Outside that game, I didn't get to play. And yeah. So my article name is A Bridge Too Far. So
Ooh, I like that.
yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you go second and then third in back-to-back Invader League seasons, you kind of it leaves a feeling, you know, there's a little something that's left to be desired there. So
That's still impressive, man. It's a 240 person tournament.
I know. I just like you kind of want to like seal the deal when you get up that high, and to get to like taste it twice is yeah. So
I feel you.
no, you don't. You won season 4.
That was like 3
Jerk.
seasons ago.
Yeah, okay.
I
Season
feel
3.
you. It's like going to every LVO and losing to Nima. That's what it feels like.
Sure.
Did Neiman knock you out both times?
Yeah. He
Wow.
sure did.
I did not know that factoid. That is that's a useful factoid. I remember this now.
Yeah.
Small Legion world.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's say we talk about some Rebel commanders.
All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I have pulled up Legion HQ because I think there is legitimate risk of us actually forgetting some if we're not looking at the list here.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that at least 2 of these don't see a lot of play.
All right, so let's start with that because I think
Start with Jyn.
Yeah, we're talking about Jyn and Han basically, right?
Yeah.
That was definitely. I almost said 3 and it was going to include Leia, but I'm not sure that's fair.
It's not. I actually think at this point, Luke Skywalker, Commander, sees less play than a lot of these other.
You stop with that hot take. I'm
not saying that should be how it is, but if people are fielding Luke Skywalker these days, mostly it's the green lightsaber version.
That's fair. But
anyway, let's talk about Han and Jyn first.
Right.
So this is a competitive show.
Oh.
I think where Kyle was headed was more we're gonna have to be real with how these units perform in a competitive setting as opposed to
Well, I'll start. So I can start if you guys don't mind with Han, because I was playing a Flyboys list. This was 2-point adjustments.
Can you explain what that is for those that don't know?
Yeah. So Flyboys is Han and Luke, and then just a bunch of troopers to back them up. And I'll say back then, this was pre 2 points adjustments ago, right? He was good because there just wasn't as much out in the field at the time, and his command hand was really strong. And then having, you had more opportunity to get into range 2 for that 2 red pierce 2, right? He was just a much stronger unit back then when there was less that could deal with that, and now that we're seeing things that are just better at shooting stuff that have red saves versus white saves, it's just he just doesn't play as much, and the command cards just don't seem as great anymore.
Well, Change of Plans is still great. Reckless Diversion used to be one of his best cards, but it was a lot better when he was like soaking DLT shots in heavy cover and rolling maybe like a 1 save with uncanny luck. Now basically it's just like, okay, so
you get to choose which unit dies.
Right. You're like, he just dies on the first or second activation of the turn, and then your opponent moves on to shooting whatever else they want. Like, it's not, it was a great card when you could just kind of throw Han out in the middle of the table in cover and have the entire army be forced to shoot him instead of whatever else you wanted to be shot. But now they just eliminate him, in a couple shots, and then they move on. So I think the impact of that card specifically has been watered down a bit. His ranged attack has always been good. It's less good when you're talking about things that strip hits because the dice pool is so small. So it's always been sort of mediocre against heavy cover. But now you have vigilance and or clone dodge sharing. Like you try and shoot a clone ball with Han, it just gets eaten.
You're like Pierce 2, Sharpshooter 1 should be great against clones, right? And
yeah, it just gets eaten by shared dodge tokens.
Exist. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just even once he gets in there, his damage used to be like super reliable and interesting even against red saves. Now it's not. So
I actually think Han's biggest problems is actually a problem that most of the characters that we're going to talk about today have, and I think that is 6 health locked behind White Surgeon defense dice is really not that great for a character at this particular juncture, and it's particularly not great when you have to close to range 2 to do anything.
Super squish.
Yeah, like Cassian sort of can get by because he's like, I have sniper rifle and I'm on the other side of the table. And I think all the other characters on this list, for the most part, have some like really good utility things they can do from like far away. Han doesn't do anything if he's not at range 2 of the opponent, really. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of uncanny luck is nice, but it
doesn't work against Pierce.
No,
he gets shredded by arcs.
I do think that like most his defense leaves much to be desired.
Yeah, it does these days. That's true.
I will say that sorry about the mess, still an amazing command card for combo shenanigans. If you're looking to do anything related to like making sure that you last first somebody with some really sick play, it's even better now because it sees the initiative, right? Like before you kind of only could do the sorry about the mess gimmick with things that like could uplink themselves or could get coordinate orders or whatever, but now with a training slot order that you can just kind of jam on just about any hero unit, I think sorry about the mess gets a lot better. You can kind of like give Luke Skywalker cunning, that's pretty good. So there are things you can do with that.
There are. It's just a lot to pay for that one like specific gimmick.
I mean, I won't pay Krennic's cost for that gimmick.
Yeah.
So, and Krennic brings a lot more to the table than Han Solo does. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even at what's he at 100 now?
He's at 100.
That is still way too much.
It's 10 more points than Rex.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 10 more than Krennic and 20 more than Veers.
So in the last 2 turns of my latest game with Timbo, I think Rex fired like 15 red dice. Like just
Rex is good. That's not a hot take.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Nor is this particular episode about Rex.
But I do think in that vein, I do think another one of the things that we'll find about a lot of these heroes is that their dice pools are not large when it comes to attacking things. And I do think that this is not a problem that's restricted to rebel commanders, but I think to commanders with like pistols and stuff in general, is that they only roll like 3 or 4 dice for the most part. And Han clearly only rolls 2. In a world where dodge token exist, or dodge sharing exists, that's a big deal. It's also a big deal when you like have to pick up B1s off the table, and like you need heroes that can like do mass quantities of damage.
Well, or you need them to be utilitarian in a different way, right? Like Han's neither. Like he's a character that was supposed to get up and in the mix, but he can't survive it or deal out damage enough to be in the mix, right? Where he's not like a Veers or a Leia where he can like hang back and like do other support like stuff to keep your army rolling. And that's his real problem, is he was designed to get in the middle of stuff, but not designed to survive it.
Well, he was when he came out.
Right. Yeah.
So,
All right, let's.
Is there any place that we think that he exists in the meta right now that you should be playing him, or should be thinking about playing him?
I could see like a Han, Lando, Chewie list where you're using Ace up his sleeve to do some kind of sorry about the mess shenanigan. Maybe.
Sure.
But outside of that, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say similar, right? He works well in like multi-hero kind of stuff, but he's too expensive for it to even work anymore.
Sure.
Well, and if you're looking for like a hero support character, I think you just take Cassian or Lando, because they both have better cards for other characters.
That's fair. I think the one place that I have played Han, and I actually wrote an article about it, is Land Speeder Han.
Since you can shoot out of it now?
Since you can shoot out of it, it's kind of fun. I think Han Sabine is where you want to be. But it's also like something I haven't tested with Lando, and it just might be better with Lando. I don't know. The fact that you can gunslinger out of it is kind of what makes it work, though. So, but I think Lando's got gunslinger on his 1-pip, doesn't he?
He does, although his dice are not as good. Like his damage is not as good as Han's.
Yeah.
No, for sure not. And like, sorry about the mess.
Anyway.
Sorry about the mess kind of allows you to get in with the land speeder and get out with the land speeder without Han being shot, which is kind of, not to mention onboard comms actually makes that whole rigmarole work a heck of a lot better, which I believe is in the lat or whatever.
It is. And now you can give him that shielding gonk droid too, if you want.
Yeah, like I think I haven't like rejiggered the list since I've seen all these upgrades and stuff, but I mean, there might be something there. I mean,
could be.
It's fun and gimmicky, if nothing else.
Do you think it's gimmicky enough to surprise people?
Oh, it totally is. The first time I played it against Bushman, he was like, "What is happening?" I drove up my land speeder and just like popped two guys, drove away, and then the next turn I drove up, popped two guys, and then like threw like explosions out the side, and I just killed like 20 clones and like 2 drive-bys, and he was like, all right.
I would love to see that list concept work because it sounds hilarious.
Yeah, it's like super fun. It's like super thematic. Like the whole like drive-by land speedering thing, I think is amazing. But you know, I do think it's probably closer to a gimmick, though. Maybe the new upgrades make it good enough. It's possible. I don't know. I haven't tried it.
I'm excited to see how people use those upgrades with land speeders.
Yeah, I think the gonk shields only work on the vehicle, right? Not they don't like shield who's inside it.
No,
that's sort of a shame.
In this specific context, but yeah, it's still useful to make the land speeder harder to kill.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
In that list, the land speeders are kind of like missiles that you jump out of before they explode.
Right.
But sure.
Yeah, I get you. All right, let's talk about Jyn. Very authentic reaction, Jay.
I mean, it was just, I remember being so excited about her, right? Because Rogue One had come out and we were like, oh man, she's going to be so good. And I just don't think she was ever good.
She still has the same problem she had when she came out, which is just that her dice pool is really small.
Yeah.
And she's expensive for, relatively minimal. Like it's consistent, I guess. Like you're gonna pick up like one dude in turn probably at range 3, but is that worth paying 100 points for? Like her command cards are.
Command card, her 3-pip is one of the best in the game
potentially,
but like it never gets played because nobody takes Jyn, right? Like it's locked behind a character that doesn't do a ton for you.
And her other 2 command cards are terrible.
I think her 2-pip is interesting,
but it's like
it's not very good.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like there are plenty of 2-pips that just give out tokens for free. Like, she actually has to take an action to give tokens to somebody else via her 2-pip.
Yeah, if it gave like a free dodge or something, it'd probably be much more interesting. If it was like My Ally Plus or something.
Right. Or even if it was just My Ally.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah,
anyway,
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, she's and then the other problem that I think is that infiltrate is such a problem with her because people who do end up playing her mistake her for being stronger than she is, right? And you infiltrate and then just get lit up, and she just can't survive the infiltration. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying there. I do think that like infiltrators are probably the best thing about her, but I get like
no question.
But it's like it is the worst thing about her if you play her poorly, right? Like, and so I do think that a lot of people get caught in this, and I think most infiltrate units have this, issue is that like people think they're bad because they're like infiltrate is terrible, but infiltrate is terrible only if you use it wrong.
Which, let's be honest, a lot of people do because they think, and I think with her deal is with danger sense and all that, and we've seen it 100 times, right? Is that you get this kind of false sense of security, like, oh, she'll be all right, and the next thing you know, she just gets lit up, right? Because she just doesn't have enough to back up this cool keyword that she has.
I think my biggest issue is that like danger sense clearly is supposed to be like her thing, and danger sense actually is bad, as far as like it doesn't like you don't want to be rolling defense dice if you're playing Jyn, like, period, which means danger sense shouldn't be on. And like if you're relying on danger sense with Jyn, something has already gone really badly.
Well, and I think this falls into a little bit of the same category as Han's defensiveness or lack thereof. Is when Jyn came out and she's getting shot by like DLTs and heavy cover, the fact that it takes some time to charge up is not as big of a deal because she's not going to die, in the first couple shots. But now she gets clone fire supported, and oh boy, you put that suppression on her unit card after she's dead. Like, it doesn't help at all against the first or even second shot. And by that time, like, you might just be picking her up off the table. So,
I mean, I do think, it's just before, like, you could put a dodge token on her and you can take duck and cover, and it would be like, you know what? Okay, Jin's kind of, she's not quite Iden, but she definitely is very resilient in heavy cover, not so much anymore.
Yeah.
I think she can still be more resilient than some other rebel characters in the right circumstances, but you just kind of do the same thing against her that you always did against her, which is basically ignore her.
Yeah, and
that's the case.
I think that like she really kind of wants to be in the thick of it. Otherwise, she like actually isn't doing anything again. Like, she's really got no good support abilities that aren't command cards. So
she's not handing out free tokens. She's not stripping suppression off people.
She's got Courage 3, which is nice, but
so does Luke.
Yeah. So
let's talk about Luke.
Yeah, let's hit somebody who we can like do something other than like poo on, because
I do think though that Luke is like the next Commander Luke is like the next least used commander on this list.
Not for lack of being good. I'm sorry. Like everybody remaining on this list is competitively viable. I don't care what anybody tells you.
I agree with that. And in fact, like we kind of started on a down note with Han and Jyn, but I think the Rebel commander roster is one of the most competitive overall. I mean, the remaining
Yeah, it's probably Separatists than Rebels. I would say. I think every commander that is available to Separatists is playable.
Yes, that's fair. I'm just talking about like internal balance aside. Rebels have some of the best commanders.
Oh, like period? Sure,
yes.
sure.
So yeah, let's start with Luke Skywalker. So for those that have forgotten, since you're used to seeing Jedi Luke, he has 160 points. And he's got 6 black dice, not 7, and 6 health. And 1 less force slot and a gear slot instead of a training slot. Otherwise, he's basically very similar to
you are like
Master of the Force.
You are skipping over
Disengage.
There it is.
All right.
You skipped over the most important keyword on that card.
All right.
And it is disengage. It is not particularly close.
So it is hard to talk about Luke Skywalker Commander without comparing the two, because Jedi Luke is really good. And obviously you can only take one version of Luke. But he's also 35 more points, which isn't nothing. And you have to also take a commander in addition to Jedi Luke if you go that route.
So what list type do you see taking Commander Luke in?
So Commander Luke, I think, is best in lists where you're not like, you want a Luke, but you're not planning on taking another commander. So the perfect example of this is like the quote unquote old school, which is not that old because, the tournament scene, like Warfare Weekend, was won by a Commander Luke list with Tauntauns. And the last tournament we had was LVO, which was the tournament after that one, as far as real life tournaments are concerned. So, like in the lifetime of the meta, that's not that long ago. Yeah. Commander Luke is for lists like that one, where he's the commander you're taking, and you still want a lightsaber and force push, basically. Is that a good summary of when you would take Commander Luke?
Yeah, I think just about any other time, like if you're going to ever take a Luke plus another commander, like just take like find the points for operative Luke. Like,
yeah. But I do think a lot of those, just to take Commander Luke lists could be pretty interesting, especially now, potentially with the party bus, the AA5 on the horizon. It's got some really nice support abilities. You can actually fit some really interesting, like 10, 11 activation, Rebel gun line plus support bus plus Commander Luke lists in there that I'm excited to see once that thing comes out. So
yeah, it's also worth mentioning that like the party bus kind of solves some of the Commander Luke problems. Like the +1 health is a kind of a big deal.
It is.
It doesn't look like it should be a big deal. It doesn't immediately feel like it should be a big deal. But the amount of times you lose your Force user, like by 1, is
high.
Lot.
Yeah. There's a reason that emergency stims used to be stapled to Luke, right?
Right. Exactly. And so, yeah, if you can keep him alive because he's in a transport, seems good, right? I definitely think, but I think you're right. If you're taking multiple commanders and Luke is one of them, just make him operative Luke. If you can find the points, I think with the minor points reduction we saw in the last update to operative Luke, like that 5 points makes it a lot more manageable than you'd think.
Yeah.
Before it was like, oh, this is 40 points. Now it's 35. I also think with the changes to like they made a lot of stuff in Rebels cheaper. And so taking operative Luke was like before a little bit more of a chore, and now it's kind of like, all right, I've got an extra 20 points or whatever to blow and upgrade to operative Luke, so let's do it.
So would you say then, so Luke being number 3 going up the ladder, is it because it's very specific situationally where we're placing him? Like, it's not, I can't think of many lists where you would put in a Commander Luke over an operative Luke right now, besides the one you just named?
I think he's higher up the list than that, but
Yeah, I'm just going in terms of popularity, not in terms of competitive viability, if that makes sense.
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so let's say you're taking Commander Luke because you're running one of those sorts of lists. Force push mandatory for that first force slot 100% of the time.
I think so.
If the character you have has the word lightsaber printed in its melee profile, force push is mandatory. I just
agree.
want to be very clear with that. like there are there
I like
are
how you worded that to exclude Palpatine, by the way.
yeah, yes, I know. There are a ton of things in Legion that are not completely solved. That is one of them. I think is that like if you have a lightsaber, you take force push. Like that is like an objectively correct thing to do. I think at this point,
Yeah.
I feel confident saying that it's not close. So
agree.
yes,
Yeah.
take force push.
I think that might be like the least controversial statement you can make in Legion. We're close to it.
I was gonna say, so can we compare it to ARC Troopers Are Busted?
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, all right, let's continue.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So take force push in that first slot. If you're not taking force push, don't even take Luke. Luke costs 170 points, basically, at least.
Definitely agree with that.
So what about so this is a more interesting discussion. What about that second force slot? What are you putting in that one?
And I gotta look at what force upgrades exist nowadays because there's so many of them. So I think any of the ones that like require them to that like you need to be using like every turn to get enough value out of them to be good is like kind of a bad option for Luke because he doesn't have Master of the Force. What I mean by that is like barrier and reflexes, like and guidance. Guidance is pretty bad generally, but barrier and reflexes, like you kind of want to be using them every turn if you're going to take them at all. And because Luke doesn't have Master of the Force, that's kind of not in the cards. So you really only get like one or two uses out of them. Don't get me wrong, like the Commander Luke recover action is definitely like in the playbook, but you don't want to be recovering every turn with Luke to like be burying your army, you know. So to me, I think it's probably Jedi Mind Trick still. I think, I could see a case for like taking Hope because Mind Trick isn't as good as it used to be because I believe it's you can't hit characters anymore. Yeah. So and suppression generally is just not as good as it used to be. It's worth noting that Mind Trick can enable Serve Your Master Well. So if you're playing Serve Your Master Well, Mind Trick better be attached to him. Is how I feel about that.
I disagree with one thing you said there.
Okay.
I think suppression in single doses is not as good as it used to be. 2 suppression at a time is arguably better in relative terms than it used to be. Because when you're talking about Courage 2 units, 1 suppression does nothing. 2 suppression potentially takes away an action.
I'm with you there, and I think the vast majority of the time you still take Mind Trick, but
yeah,
I think you take nothing.
Oof, that's a hot take.
I think you take force push and nothing else.
So I actually agree with you, Jay.
Ooh.
Oh, not so hot take now.
No, I was actually building Commander Luke lists over the weekend, just for fun, and I often found myself just leaving that second force slot blank.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see it. I do think that like if you have 5 points, you should probably take Mind Trick.
Sure, but if you don't, it's not. It's rare that you leave a force slot blank. Palpatine is probably the only other character that ever does it. But like you said, he doesn't have Master of the Force. Most force powers are exhaustible.
Yep.
I feel like
And-
it bogs down the character. Because you're like, okay, I got force push, and and you want to use that second one, but then maybe you use it too early or not in the right spot, and now you're stuck with it exhausted,
Yeah, I mean, I think Mind Trick is still fine if you potentially use it once, especially if you're running Serve, which you probably are, unless you're running him with R2, then you're probably running Blast Off there instead. But yeah, like I wouldn't feel terrible about leaving that slot blank.
Yeah.
Saber Throw doesn't do much for him because he already has a range profile that's decent with his pistol. Hope is and Batman is also kind of because you want to give the order to Luke most of the time anyway. So yeah, those are like the quote unquote passive force powers that don't exhaust, and none of them are particularly great on Luke either. So
Yeah, I mean, Hope should just cost 0.
yeah, or
I think that would be totally fine. Like, oh, you have an empty force slot here, gain Inspire 1.
right.
Like,
and frankly, like shouldn't Jedi be inspiring? Isn't that the whole point? Right.
Like I think hope and fear both should just be, if you have an empty force slot, like
just fill it.
Get this thing for free. Whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So yeah, I think I'm with you, Jay. I think it's Mind Trick if you got the points, but if you don't feel too bad about leaving it blank.
Yeah.
Gear slot.
I like environmental gear on him. Same as with Boba, because you got jump, which is nice, but how often do you then run into like another barricade or something and you're like, I can't do it again, so having unhindered is really nice on units like that, and for 2 points it's not bad.
I could see it. I think I'd probably take Recon Intel if I'm going to spend 2 points there.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's like a non-zero quantity of situations where you're like, I wish I could jump twice here.
Yeah.
I also think like there is an argument to be made for Ascension cables, just because of like the Jedi and stuff. Like Luke does tend to take recover actions at some point in the game, and being able to like ignore difficult terrain twice and like have one, there's just like a lot. It opens up some scenarios that are like really cool and weird, but between having jump and scale.
Yeah.
You can like jump like to the end of a building, scale down it, and then like move again, or there's all sorts of cool shenanigans you can do there.
I mean, those are really the three, right? Like, I don't know that there's an argument. Maybe, no, I don't think there's.
Do you think Stims, now that it's back down to, I mean, it was 8 originally, then it was 12, now it's 10.
I think in a world where like 1 or 2 wounds is a lot, yeah, it totally makes sense. But like nowadays, you're not. The dice pools are just so big. I think it's often going to be 10 dead points. I felt like that one before, when it was 8 and people were taking it. I thought it was a little bit like, I get it. Like, I get why they were taking it, but like dice pools were like way smaller back then. And now they're like 50% to 60% larger,
Yeah. And even back then, like, even like it was annoying, but it didn't seem insurmountable. Even back then, right? You were like, all right.
All right, hang on. Didn't we just get done talking about how the difference between Luke Commander 6 health and Jedi Luke 7 health?
100%. Do we want to get into my hot take that all Jedi are bad?
Well, no.
Okay.
Yeah, right now. We don't
abort. Abort.
Great.
I think you don't take this either, but I think the reason is different than what you're describing.
Sure.
I think the zombie turn of a Jedi has kind of decreased in value in relative terms. Like it used to be, like if you go back to like the Wonder Twins days or the Veers Boba days, right? Where your centerpiece is Boba or Luke. It wasn't uncommon for them to die and for you to like still win the game because the rest of your army could do stuff.
Well, and they often made up their points right? Like you're like,
That's what I
"Oh,
mean.
I dove with Luke and killed 4 units, right?
Right.
Him dying is not a big deal.
Right. That doesn't really happen anymore. Like if
Yeah.
if Luke dies, you've probably just lost. You know, getting like an extra turn for Luke to take a swing at things is not gonna turn a loss into a win in my experience.
You said we were not going to hit this button, but you're really talking about the button that
Am
I
I?
was trying not to hit.
Well,
Keep going though.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to push this button a little more. Kyle,
We can
do you
table some of
think-
these commanders for next week. That's fine.
Do you think that is because before, I think it's a combination of both of what you guys are talking about, because before you could get closer because you weren't getting shot as much with as big a dice pool. So the output of damage was higher, where now you're not, the likelihood of you getting as close as you used to be able to with Luke to cause all that damage seems less likely because of the dice pools.
I think it just has more to do with how like force user lists are constructed these days, and that it's more sort of like they're putting more of the game on their back than they used to. I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe why I have this feeling, because I have been playing force users pretty religiously and consistently since the game came out.
Yeah.
But it's something I've noticed. I think that, I mean, I played Maul in Invader League. I think they're still great. But I also don't think that, like, you know, oh, I get to do one more thing with this force user. Like I strive for my force users not to die. Period.
Well, if they die, you lose the game nowadays.
That's
like,
what I mean.
You know.
Yeah.
But I think, to your point, like, force users are not units that can carry the game anymore.
Yeah.
Not really, right? They can't make up their points. Like, don't get me wrong, there are situations where a force user can get you out of the game and like carry it that other units can't, right? And that's because force push is an amazing ability. However, you're like, the situation of I get in there and kill like 4 units, like, doesn't happen unless you're playing against somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And I think the biggest thing I think that is crippled force users, and to some extent Commander Luke, is that like people know how to deal with them now. Before it was like, oh, they've got a force user, he's behind a wall, I guess I'm screwed. And like nowadays, I think people are much more, they're measuring more. They know what the engagement ranges are, like pretty, religiously. And it's a lot harder to dive with a force user piece and like get it to stick without having them die, which means you're only trading for like 1, maybe 2 units, which are often core units. And that's generally like, I don't know, depending on the faction, between 120 and like 180-ish points, which like maybe you traded, and that's like the ceiling for what you did with this force user damage wise. And the floor is I did nothing. And when you're spending 200 points on a piece in your army, like, it better be able to put the game on its back every game.
Yeah, I mean, because there's similarly, I'm going to go back to the thing I know best, which is heavies, right? And they're similarly priced, but I know I could put an ATST in the middle of the field and it'll probably be, barring a clone fire support, it'll probably be all right, but if I put Luke in the middle of the field, no, Luke's gone.
I hear you.
Same price.
That's a little
ish.
I feel like that's a little bit of a binary way to look at force users. It's just based purely on, how much stuff they murder.
It's definitely more complicated than that, but I do think that is why their value has decreased.
Experience is definitely a factor.
Yeah, I just like, before, when Legion was in its infancy, you could pretty much rely on like 80% of your opponents slipping up and basically allowing you to get into a situation where it was impossible to kill your Force user and they were cutting up the enemy army. And those situations don't happen anymore. So there are a lot less free wins on the table because you took a unit with Force Push and have a lightsaber. And I, you know, they're really cool, interesting tools. But the rest of your army kind of has to make up the firepower difference nowadays as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, and I also think I don't want to turn this from a Force user gripe into a silhouette gripe. But you used to be able to take more forward positions and zone more safely. And now like silhouettes are so flankable.
Yeah.
If you get your Force user up behind a wall that's in a remotely aggressive position, your opponent just goes around the side and nips the sliver of that corner and shoots them. You used to be able to zone much more aggressively with Force users than you can now, and I think that has everything to do with silhouettes.
Silhouettes are definitely a huge part of it. I definitely think that a lot of the players that like hated the fact that Luke's lightsaber stuck straight up in the air would rather have that be the case than have silhouettes be on.
Yeah,
because at least like that only comes up in like certain situations, whereas the silhouette problem is like it's just always on.
Well, and to get like super nuanced here for a second, the lightsaber is a vertical thing, whereas the silhouette is like a sideways thing.
Yeah, totally.
So, you can hide the lightsaber behind a terrain piece that's tall enough, which for most line of sight blockers is a significant portion. But the silhouette introduces shootable area on basically every terrain piece because it decreases, they call it slicing the pie but it decreases the angle at which you need to slice the pie, right?
Yeah, no, it's a lot harder,
Do you think that will translate the same to in real life games?
So I admittedly have not used silhouettes in real life games yet.
Kyle, how could you?
Dude,
he hasn't left his house in a year.
I'm just kidding.
I have, just not to play Legion.
Yeah.
I found, so we've played a couple in real life games and we've had the silhouettes, but I found majority of the time we didn't really need them because it's like, yep, I could see them. You know what I mean? And I think we used them like once or twice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's gonna, silhouettes are gonna be a mess of a thing that I think we have to work through as real life Legion, because like they weren't really used yet in real life. They kind of like happened as the pandemic hit.
Yep.
I think people are going to learn very quickly as soon as like the first couple times your opponent's going to be like, can you put the silhouette down, please? And like they got, you're going to find people, I think, using them way more often as they get punished for these positions that will look safe, but aren't.
Yeah.
I also think it's a little easier to, on TTS, you can just hit a button and they toggle, right?
Yeah.
It's a little bit more work to like put the physical silhouette down there. And therefore, I think you just, maybe people aren't looking for these shots as much as they should be. But I can confidently say that they exist because the silhouette significantly increases the area of a trooper mini that they take up. So
like when we introduced them in TTS, I used to not turn silhouettes on when I was considering targets at all because I was like, oh, this isn't a big deal. And then like a couple months later, like I sort of started learning like you should just always turn the silhouettes on whatever time you're targeting, because honestly, the shot is there more often than you think it is with silhouettes.
Every single time.
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be a thing.
Yeah, we'll see. But Atlantic City is going to be an interesting test of that because I think that'll be the first like reasonably sized event using silhouettes.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Anyway. So
Anyways,
Back to our commander discussion. As much as I want to sort of continue, because we could go super in depth on Luke because he's so darn interesting. As much as I want to do like a how do you use Luke discussion, I feel like we could sort of lump that more broadly into a separate episode that is how do you use a jumping force user.
How do you use a non-imperial force user? Yeah, sure. Or
Yeah,
Dooku, I guess.
Yeah, I think Dooku counts.
I know how you use an imperial force user. You don't.
Jay, we almost made it through this episode without any Empire assault. Come on.
Sorry. Go ahead. Tell me about the next commander that Rebels have. That's amazing.
So I would like to table the how to. We're not shortchanging the how to use Luke discussion. But I think that will make a good podcast topic for a future episode.
All right.
Because there are many other units that function like Luke does. So let's hit Lando. Actually, let's hit Leia. Let's hit Leia next. Because I think Leia has kind of disappeared from the table too recently.
Which is crazy.
I don't think it's that crazy.
She's definitely like... I think she's been, out of everything that we're talking about today, I think she's been hurt the most by the like power scaling. Like her abilities don't scale super well. And like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, she's fine. I don't know if she's worth 90 points anymore.
See, I see her the same vein as Veers. Like, she's a very good support. She can't be just like, she's not your corner piece of your army, right? She's something that's there to support your corner piece, whether it's Sabine and you know, Sabine or the Tauntauns. I think if you have those in your list, she's a great piece to have with those. I think she's a good support piece.
So I think she's always been a good support piece. The problem is the Rebel officer is also a good support piece, and he's half the cost. I know this is funny because there was definitely like when the Rebel officer came out, we were like, this guy is terrible. And he's kind of still terrible, but he's also only 45 points.
And like you can give him a what is it, the
scanner thing,
the portable scanner thing for 6 points, and like he does most of the stuff Leia does outside command cards.
Well, and part of this too is one of the great things about Leia. She suffers from the same thing Han and Jyn do to some degree. Is one of the great things about her used to be, you know, that she had sharpshooter 2, Pierce, and 3 dice, and she was really good at killing stuff at range 2 for a support commander. Which isn't really a thing anymore, you know.
Yeah. If your support commander is at range 2, they're also dead.
Unless you're Rex.
Sure.
But I find that I understand what you guys are saying, but she's never struck me as someone that was on the front line. She always seemed like someone that kind of came behind your front lines and then did the work behind it while using her command cards to push the rest of your army or making holes for your army to work.
Yeah, I think that's still true. And No Time for Sorrows is still one of the best 2 pips in the game. But Coordinated Bombardment has lost a little.
Is it?
It's a really good card.
Is it?
But you can also duplicate that effect with Smokescreen, basically.
Or you could just take aggressive negotiations.
Rebels can't take aggressive negotiations, Mike.
Just Leia, but better in every way.
Look, she's Leia's mom. All right.
Yes, she is.
Anyway, you know, her 3 pip has kind of always been bad. Coordinated Bombardment used to be amazing, but now it's just been kind of power corrupt. So I think if you want to take Leia, you just take the Rebel officer, basically. Right now.
I also think the other segment of this discussion, and I think Jay, to your point, she basically does all the same things that she used to, but just as like fine. Okay. But I think the main issue here might be more centered around the things that she supports are not what they used to be.
Yeah.
And we've talked about rebel core units. Like you have to be like, to put her in a list where she's worth taking to support your core units, like you have to be taking a very particular type of list, I think, these days. And that's like, rebel troopers with DLTs and captains and situational awareness is like, if that's the setup you're taking, maybe you want to take her. But I think those lists are kind of like, they would rather have a hero that could punch stuff a lot of the time.
Well, and you can check the vigilance box in those lists just by taking a rebel officer.
Right. And that's the other thing. Like,
Orlando.
But I also think that like a lot of the only place that I think Leia like really shines these days is if you still are trying to play Tauntauns.
Yeah.
Like she goes in those lists because No Time for Sorrows is a big portion of why those lists work.
Agree. Which I think more people should still be trying to play Tauntauns, but that's a discussion for our support slot episode.
I hope y'all don't, because I still hate them.
No, yes, I do too. There's still a horrible experience to play against, but doesn't mean they're not still competitive. Anyway, this is not a podcast about Tauntauns or the sports slot.
What?
So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Jay? Like,
here's my thought on this. I think we get caught up in what's currently been being played, and you guys even just admitted it yourself that like those lists that were good, right? I mean, there were some changes, but those lists that were good right before we went into the pandemic still have legs. Just no one's been playing them because there's been new hotness. And so I still see her very much as I see Veers. Very good. I don't get Veers up and shooting anything. If I'm getting Veers up to shoot something, my list is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. He's shooting things like he's the very last person who should be shooting things in my list. And so I think she's the same way. And you just have to build around her, understanding that she's a support piece, not a cornerstone.
Well, so maybe this is just like, I don't think Veers is very good anymore either. I think he's got the same problem Leia does, in that like Imperial officer plus electro binoculars is like just way better than Veers ever could be.
That's
for the cost.
Yeah,
completely false.
I'm not actually sure I agree there, because I think
you could take in 2 Imperial officers with electro binoculars, but for almost the price of Veers plus whatever.
Yeah, sure. But here's the thing. Both Veers and Leia, their value isn't in electro binoculars or doing that sort of stuff. Their value is in their command cards and how they command the army. That's where their value lies.
Veers command hand is terrible.
It isn't for double heavy. It isn't for triple bikes. It isn't for 2 lats.
But Jay, are those lists really any good?
Yes, is the answer.
I don't know.
Maybe not the 2 lats. That one I may be oversold, but the other ones.
Well, we can have that hot take on the Empire Commander.
I'm sorry, we got off on Commander, but I think if you want somebody who's going to be aggressive and in the mix and knocking off units, no, you don't want Leia. That's not what she does. She is a army support.
So if you're not going to have her shooting stuff, besides No Time for Sorrows, what are you paying the extra 45 points for?
These are all great questions.
I mean that's kind of how I look at it, right? Like, take cover 2, totally replaceable by the officer. Inspire, replaceable by the officer. Like, if she's not shooting things and you don't care a ton about her command cards, like, what's left?
I mean, I think somebody has to save our skins is better than you guys are giving it credit for here. I'm not saying it's great, but I think it's better.
No, it's not. It's like the worst Rebel 3 pip that exists.
No time for stars. And then the other thing I like for coordinated bombardment is, though it's not as potent as it once was, it still has people thinking about how they place. And so it becomes almost like a nuclear deterrent a little bit for how people are placing their units.
So I will say one thing with respect to coordinated bombardment. It has always been good against bikes. And it is still good against bikes. And now that we have competitive bikes via STAPs, I could see an argument for taking, like, if you want to specifically counter STAPs, I could see an argument for taking Leia so that you can nuke them with coordinated bombardment.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than air support, I think, in that specific situation.
Yes.
I mean, I think it helps with arcs. It doesn't.
You at least make them roll saves, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Sure.
And put them on the defense right from the beginning. If you did like an alpha strike with it, I that's the type of stuff I'm saying that she brings to the table. That kind of is more than just what her card says. Those command cards kind of open up your possibilities a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the issue with arcs specifically is that they're just going to have shared dodge tokens. They're going to deploy them in cover, like where you can't see them. They're going to take some dodge tokens. They're going to move them out of cover. And then like you're going to coordinate a bombard and like you're probably, maybe you roll a crit, right? Like it's not that unlikely, but most of the time you're going to be able to just dodge away whatever is coming through.
But do you think there's a value in forcing them to deploy behind cover, where if you didn't have Leia and you had something else that wasn't going to get to them as quickly, that they'd be a little bit more brazen in the way they deploy?
Not with arcs.
Most of the time, no.
Because they can just move and get the same shot with a name token. So
I just like, I start all my games like that nowadays. Now that like it's just a good habit to be in, because with air support and what's the
orbital strike,
orbital bombardment. Now that everybody's got like a range infinite nuke, I just think if you've got strike teams at the beginning of the game, they should be behind line of sight blockers. Like, and I don't know.
All right.
I could see like taking it again, if you're specifically looking to counter STAPs, taking her in conjunction with Cassian and doing like a back-to-back, crack shot sniper rifle coordinated bombardment situation. You can put some pressure on strike teams too that way. And Cassian's crack shot has the additional bonus of having high velocity if you're using it with a sniper rifle, so you can't do the dodge mitigation thing. But yeah, I could see that. But for the most part, there's just too much overlap with her role with the half price rebel officer that especially when you're talking about the fact that having multiple copies of vigilance is important and relevant for most lists that you want to be taking a support commander in. Like I guess you could take like Leia and Lando, but that's pretty expensive. Or you could just take 2 rebel officers and do almost the same thing, So why don't we talk about the rebel officer real quick, since we're basically doing it? Is this your vigilance bot, basically?
Yeah, I mean, depending on,
and I mean that in like the most positive way possible, because I think they're awesome vigilance bots.
I think all the generics right now are super competitively viable, as much as like the clones and the separatist ones get flack for being too good. I think these are also like, they're pretty affordable and they do a lot of similar things. I think that you should probably take a portable scanner on this bad boy too. If you're doing the vigilance, situational awareness, core spam thing, you're going to want to be able to hand out 2 dodge tokens at a time anyways. So I think bumping them up to 56 points as opposed to 50, I think is fine.
I think the scanner is good if you have the points. In my experience, having run the double vigilance list, it's kind of overkill. Just because, the rebel troopers have nimble and you're carrying over with 2 copies of vigilance, you're carrying over 4 dodges anyway.
Sure. I guess it only matters on the initial setup.
Right. Which is still like, if you're going to be in the mix immediately, then that's potentially useful. But usually you have a chance to like either hand out, a couple dodges with their normal take cover value, and or just move and take a dodge with the rebel troopers themselves. Usually you have time to do that, in my experience. So yeah, it's good if you have an extra 6 points, but I rarely find that I have that. So I often end up just taking these guys as 45 points plus vigilance equals 50 points and call it a day. But they're amazing in those Captain Situational Awareness DLT/Z6 Rebel Trooper lists, or for any list with Jedi Luke in it.
So do you feel like with those, could you take like only generic commanders and no operatives and try to rely on them to drive the army, or do you need something else in there as well?
I think you absolutely could. I think if you do that, you're running something like a double T47 list.
Yep, that was what immediately popped in my head too.
Like, you definitely don't want to just take a couple rebel officers and a bunch of rebel troopers and stuff. Like, that's right. You're gonna need rebel lists. The rebel roster has a lot of good like focus/anchor units in it. You're gonna want to take one of those. And in the context of if you're just taking a rebel officer or two and know their characters, then that's going to be T47s probably.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that like I think one of the hidden costs to that is that like the rebel generic command cards are pretty bad. Like
they're really bad.
Like the new Clone Wars era faction generics are like whoa in comparison. I mean, like the Rebel 3 pip is like I would say the most playable in like a vacuum. The Rebel 1 pip is probably the strongest, but the amount of times it comes up and being able to hit with it is and the Rebel 2 pip is like, all right. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine.
But they don't do anything special, and it's really hard, I feel like, to put all three of them in the same list.
Yeah. I mean, even in that T47 list we described, you're definitely taking R2.
Right. Yeah.
Who is another character. I foresee basically no situation where you're taking just a rebel officer and not at least taking R2.
Yeah, I think you're taking some sort of named hero.
So yeah. Just to understand this right, you would take the rebel officer because they do the same thing as Leia, but you need to take another character because you need more command cards. But you guys didn't like Leia for her command cards.
Well, just Leia's twice as expensive, just to be clear.
Well, and also you're not taking those characters just for their command cards. Like, you're not taking R2 for his command cards.
Right. I understand. It just seems interesting.
It's also worth noting you can take the officer and R2 for Leia's price.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
I get it. Just want to double check.
Yeah, no. I mean,
no, that's good, Jay. You gotta keep us honest.
That's right.
Otherwise, Mike and I will just be echo chambering back and forth this whole time. All right. Anyway, any more thoughts on the rebel officer?
No. Way better than it was a year and a half ago or whenever it released. For like sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think back to your point, Mike. Like across the board, they for Empire too, those generic commanders they just got so much better.
Yeah, I think the game is just like the weight of cheap activations has just increased over the game's lifetime, whether for a variety of reasons. And having cheap activations that you can just kind of like hide behind a line of sight blocker and do something relevant with is okay. Like not every piece in your army has to be shooting the enemy. But the ones that aren't like should be cheap.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
all right, Cassian.
All right. Yeah, so let us real quick, because we've been going at this for a while. So the last two commanders are Cassian and Lando. who besides the Rebel generic, I think are probably the two best Rebel commanders.
Cassian is definitely the Rebel commander that I believe sees the most play outside of the generic, probably right now.
Yes.
I think Lando is, people are flirting with Lando. I'm not sure like where the community as a whole has landed on this. He definitely did worse in Invader League than I expected him to, but there wasn't that many people playing him.
Yeah, there was like 2, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because of the complexity?
Oh, he's super complicated. I'm not convinced like Anakin's flaw is debilitating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like, I think Callus's flaw is play aroundable. Lando's flaw, I'm like genuinely unsure on if it's a competitive problem or not. And I don't think we've got enough data to really come to a good conclusion on that.
Yeah, I almost want to table Lando.
I think we should talk about him, but I just like, I think I think anything we say on Lando right now is sort of inconclusive.
He hasn't quite landed in a good spot as far as knowing where he fits in the Rebel meta at the moment.
Well, again, yeah, I think it's just because you like look at him and he's got so much going on. You're just like, okay, I got to wrap my head around this. Like, how is he going to fit in with the rest of what I'm trying to run here?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I sort of think like he's got like a bit of the Leia problem in that, like, you kind of like want to be running him in like your op Luke lists, but like a lot of the times when you're running op Luke, you just want to take a generic because it's so much cheaper. And like, is Contingencies 3 and Lando's command cards worth the extra 60 plus points you have to pay for that activation?
Well, hang on. It's not just, first of all, Contingencies is a great ability.
I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
But is it worth like
60 points?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it might be. First of all, his command cards are great, especially Ace Up His Sleeve.
They are. The standby, is that the standby one?
That's the standby one.
Yeah. His command cards are fantastic. No doubt about it. Luke's command cards are too.
Oh, totally. But now you can take all of them. Like Luke has 6, Lando has 3. You can take all 9 of them. I recognize that you cannot play all 9 of them in a game.
Well, and I think so. For me, I think this is one of the reasons we haven't seen as much Callus as well. I think, and I think Contingency. So there is. You're going to play 6 command cards over the course of the game. Often, particularly in competitive games, a couple times you're playing standing orders, once or twice, generally. Yeah. So you're only playing like 4, 5 command cards in a given game. All Contingencies is expanding your options as opposed to like allowing you to play more effects. So you're not actually like gaining like value, like you're gaining options, but you're not gaining power. And I think that's an important distinction. You can sort of gain power by being able to choose a better option, but I don't think that comes up nearly as often as we'd like to think it does.
Wasn't that you used to say? I always took this to heart, Mike. I think you said it on this podcast or to me on my podcast. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was on a podcast you said this, but you shouldn't be choosing the command card for the flavor text of what it does. You should be choosing it for the pip that you need to play for that turn, right? And I think that kind of falls into that what you're trying to say here, where it's like, okay, I can have 3 more, but I'm still going to play a 2 pip on this turn.
To some extent, yeah. I think that like. I remember when I used to say that. Command cards have gotten way better.
But I think that's still a base of how you should operate when you're playing, and I think that's why Contingencies doesn't seem as good because you're like, well, I still need to play a 2 here.
Right, and I think that's where I'm talking about, like, you only get 6 command card plays, and like, are you increasing your options? Yeah, but like, how much is that actually increasing your power level? Like, is having Lando's 2-pip in the average game available over both of Luke's 2-pips? Like, how much is that worth? There's some games it's going to be incredible, but I feel like the average amount of games that having that option available to you, it's like a lot less than incredible. And I don't know how much it's worth.
So it depends, because I think it's great with situational command cards, and Rebels happen to have one of the best situational command cards in the game, which is I'm a Jedi.
They've got a couple. The other notable one is the Rebel generic 1-pip, I think.
Yes, Sabcoms.
Yep, because it shuts down clankers pretty hard.
It does. Well, and especially tactical
strike. Yeah.
Blast Off is a good situational card.
Totally.
And if you're running Rebels, you're probably running R2. So, I think specifically I think the Empire conversation is a little different because they don't have as many like sort of situational home run command cards as Rebels do. But I think the value of contingencies in Rebels is potentially pretty high.
I think it is too. That's the only reason I haven't written Lando off.
Yeah,
honestly.
But while we're talking about, is this worth 60 more points than the generic, we also have to mention that he does have covert ops, which means that he can infiltrate, which is potentially great. He also has sharpshooter 2 and a range 3 gun with Pierce. So, we just got done poo-pooing small dice pools on other heroes, but those were mostly range 2 dice pools. And also, Han and Jyn both have sharpshooter 1 instead of sharpshooter 2. So
undoubtedly more play than your average Rebel hero.
Right, like he's gonna pick up a model a turn very reliably. Which at range 3 for a character with good command cards is fine.
Yeah, I just feel like,
unless it's a B1, and then you don't care. But
right, yeah.
If you're talking about like picking up a phase 2 a turn, like that's good.
Is the sacrifice though at 105 worth him though? Like that's 105 just base. That's 105 points out of you want him in operative Luke. You're already at 300 points and you haven't added anything onto him.
I mean, maybe it's not. In that particular pairing, the standby token is potentially game changing.
Oh, it 100% is. Like, I think that card in that combination is like probably Lando's best place in the meta. I think. I could be very proved wrong, but seems hard to beat that effect. With that being said, this might be just a problem with like Operative Vader. Like that effect kind of already is a thing, and people don't play it. So
yeah, but a standby token on Operative Vader is very different than a standby token on Jedi Luke.
Standby tokens are still very difficult to time.
Well, you only take it once you're in melee, and then they can't strip it, right? I mean, it's not that different.
I guess not that different. I don't know.
Disengage is a big deal, no doubt, but like, I don't know. I think the jury's out on Lando. I think you totally can try and play him competitively viable, like in a competitive setting, and I think like go crazy, go nutso. I think the more he gets tested in a competitive setting, the better. I don't know what to think of him. He's got a lot of similarities to Rebel heroes that are not so great, and he's got a lot of things that maybe push him into a place where he's totally good. What I don't think he's good at is any sort of list where it's like just him. or
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
like you've gotta
no,
if
definitely.
you're not utilizing contingencies, like there's no reason to have Lando in your list.
Totally agree.
And that kind of goes back to like, is contingencies worth it for 50 points? I don't know. Like, but like in some situations it could be, and but like, if you've got like a Lando, Han, Leia list, like the power level of your command cards are like really low, so contingencies probably isn't great. But like if it's like Lando, Sabine, Luke, like I don't know.
I'm gonna go so far as to say even in a 2-character list. Because then you're throwing like generics in your contingencies pile or something, and then are you really getting value out of it?
Right.
I think he should probably be like the 3rd character in a 3-character list.
Or with Luke, who's got 1 billion command cards.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And even then, you're probably still taking R2.
Probably. I do think that like if more characters get like the Luke Vader treatment, Lando's stock could go way up.
Potentially.
But we haven't seen that again. So
Yeah.
Also, what other faction can competitively say, I think he should be the 3rd character in a 3-character list and be talking about lists that are competitive?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe Republic. I mean, like Rex, Padme, R2. I don't know. Probably not. I'm making stuff up. You're good. Continue. I'm trying to find an out here.
Sokka crazy now.
I just think that's kind of cool because there are legitimately quite a few competitive 3, if not 4-character rebel lists.
For sure.
Anyway, speaking of multi-character rebel lists, let's talk about Cassian Andor.
All right. Is K2 an auto with him?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I'll open with the hot take. Best rebel commander by a mile. I don't think it's particularly close. With the possible exception of Lando.
I disagree. Because I think the rebel generic officer is
okay. Sorry, best rebel named commander by a mile. Sorry.
All right.
Let me clarify.
That I think I can get behind.
Okay. He's cheap. He is efficient. He's flexible. His command cards are all awesome. He allows you to take another cheap, efficient unit in K2 that is super powerful, has a lot of different flexible play options and weird standby interactions due to, what is it, incognito on K2?
Yep.
He's got infiltrate. Like Cassian, man, has it all, I feel like.
Well, there's one very important thing that he doesn't have.
Curse tree. Is that where we're headed?
A command slot.
Okay. I mean, I'm willing to give up vigilance for Cassian Andor.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just saying, like, if you're doing a vigilance build, that's something you got to consider.
It is. I mean,
could Jyn? I mean, I know we said Jyn was bad, but does she play well into that with vigilance?
No, just take Lando or a generic.
Take an officer.
Yeah.
Cassian works well from afar. He can, and in a pinch, you can get him in there close up, and his gun isn't bad. His pistol's got what's the keyword on it? Is it long shot? So like he can bump it to range 3, and red black at range 3 is like,
it's good.
It's
with a marksman.
And you've got tactical, like,
and Pierce 1.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, Cassian to me is a well-costed, super awesome hero. I can't say enough good things about Cassian. He's still, like, if he gets caught, he will die, but at least like he can do things.
Well, and frankly, like his weapons, his weapon attacks are basically what other rebel characters should just have.
Yeah,
right?
I'll agree with that 100%.
How much
Like-
value does loadout even have with him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Because I was thinking, I was like looking at, I'm like, I don't know, what would you?
I think you want offensive push most of the time anyway.
Yeah.
so I think right now it doesn't have a super huge value. I think in 4 years, that conversation could change dramatically. But I think like we're still sort of in the game's infancy where like
Because you're saying there's going to be a ton of extra upgrades.
we're gonna have like 60 training upgrades in 4 years, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean maybe not, but like they tend to want to print new upgrades and new packs. So like I don't know. Loadout is one of those abilities that just kind of like as options increase, this ability will get better. It's similar to contingencies in that way. But yeah, I think you can kind of ignore loadout on this card most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically like potentially free benefit.
Yeah.
You throw like offensive push in there with duck and cover or Overwatch, and maybe like 1 in 10 games, it's better to choose one of those over the other. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think the other thing with like training slots and some gear slots, like it's hard sometimes to envision what you're gonna need
Right.
until the game starts developing,
And you're like, oh, it would have been nice to have that.
yeah, and then you
Yeah.
like regret your decision,
Yeah.
and then next time that you should use it, you don't. I don't know. It's a whole thing. But right now, I think most of the effects in those slots are pretty samey, or not super like impactful in a way that you should pay a ton of attention to this. It's certainly not as influential as it is on Iden, where you get to pick which gun she takes at the beginning of the game.
Well, that's because Cassian just gets both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although his guns are not as nearly as different from each other as Iden's are.
That's also fair.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's one of those like don't forget about it. Like you might as well put something else, in that pairing just in case. But you're still basically filling that, like you're taking his gun in the armament slot every time, basically.
Yeah.
And then you're filling your first training slot with offensive push.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the points, I could see situational awareness in the second training slot because he tends to get a lot of dodges from calculate odds and from his command cards.
That's fair.
And it's only 2 points.
I also think like any upgrades that are exhaustible kind of get a free benefit because he has a recover card.
Yep, volunteer mission.
He can play. Also worth noting, he combos well with Luke because he gives operatives and commanders recovers. So
and oodles of dodge tokens potentially.
And oodles of dodge tokens. And that's sort of like, going to like just I don't want to like tread super back to the Leia conversation, but like Cassian gives Luke dodge tokens better than Leia does. Like
yeah, he does.
And he also brings a sniper rifle that can like poke your enemy every turn. So
jab is a better word than poke.
Sure, jab your enemy.
It's more like
turn.
Yeah.
You're kind of jabbing him in the eye every turn.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's an infinite range gun with pierce and high velocity, it's like one of the very few things in this game where like a clone player sits down across from Cassian Andor and they're like,
like, oh crap,
this is gonna suck.
Yep.
You're like, this guy is picking up at least one clone off the table every turn, bare minimum. And if that's all Cassian does is pick up 6 phase 2s, he's traded out.
Yeah.
And often he does much more than that.
He does more, yeah. Because often it's like 2 at a time.
Right. And this is kind of like going back to the whole like, conversation about making your points back is like there's this 100, what is he with the gun? 105 Sorry, 100. He's
100.
100 plus some upgrades. He's like 110. You know, he's doing his damage back most games, right? You know, and he's not even really that combat-y of a hero most of the time.
I think it's also sort of easy to overlook the suppression mitigation effect on 2 of his 3 command cards.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Like Last Stand gives Indomitable to your target, which, you know, it's not uncommon for Rebel characters to get kind of loaded up with suppression. So that's a nice little side benefit to that card. And then, of course, Volunteer Mission has the free recover for the same thing. So, you know, Sabine in particular tends to kind of get suppressed. So, you know, that's a good pairing for her. He's got 2 cards that clear her suppression. And then, of course, you have Danger Sense on Volunteer Mission too, which is hilarious on red save units.
It's really good. He's just, all of his cards are either crackshot or super synergistic with everything Rebels want to be doing.
I mean, Rebels have good characters, and he's a character support hero. So
yeah, that is 100%.
And K2 is also great. We can probably talk about K2 separately on our operative episode, but for now, like, is there any situation where you take him without the gun? Without Jyn's gun?
I don't think so.
Hold up, let me look at his unit card again. I don't play Rebels that often, so bear with me.
Whoa. Let's everybody just calm down and take a look at this card.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
I forgot if he had a generic range profile.
He does not.
Yeah, no.
There
I
you go.
think the gun. So K2 to me is interesting, specifically because of the standby sharing shenanigans you can pull with him. You can kind of put him in like positions that would normally be vulnerable, and then take a standby token and like immediately punish anybody that like gets to range 1 of him.
Yeah, you don't mean sharing. You just mean that it's difficult to strip standbys with him because of incognito.
Yeah. So like they can't just like blow the standby off him before he gets to use it, right? And he can't take damage while he's got the standby. He can just like stand out in an open field with a standby token and be like, "Yo, bring it." And he might be the only piece in the game that can do that and like really threaten his zone.
Yeah, I mean, technically you can do it with Sith probe droids, but you don't really care about their attack that much.
Yeah, they're not like, you just shoot them off the table as soon as they're like, "Hey, we're here."
Yeah, you don't want to break incognito with them.
Yeah,
K2 wants to be attacking things at some point.
Yeah. It is not incognito on them, not inconspicuous.
Yep.
Those words are so similar, and they do such similar things.
Yeah.
It's so silly. But yeah, I mean, I think K2 there's not another piece like him in Legion, and he's cheap, efficient. His melee attack's pretty good too. You know, it's pretty close to like Darth Vader's lightsaber without Pierce.
And he's got Calculate, which directly synergizes with Cassian's teamwork.
Yeah.
Sorry, technically the teamwork is on K2's card, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. Running with Cassian.
Because you literally can't do it any other way.
So here's an interesting question. Because tactically I get this question a lot. Because there's basically 2 different ways to play Cassian, right? There's like the sniper version, which is fine. And then there's the up close and personal version, which is also fine.
Yep.
But if you're playing in a particular game, the sniper version of Cassian, how do you like, what do you do with K2? Because you want him at range 2 of Cassian, so you can do teamwork and or calculate odds. But at the same time, if Cassian's like in the backfield picking off dudes, you know, that's probably not close enough for K2 to do much else. Like, is that a problem? Or is that fine?
I prefer being starting the game in a sniper position and being in a place to be able to hot swap into like an objective zone.
Yeah, that's how I've seen him the best played. I think I played a game against Keegan. I don't remember when, and that's how he did it. It was like he could hot swap but then was also like zoning out the objective towards one edge of the board.
So you don't want, if you do sniper casting, you don't want him so far back that he's not going to be able to make a difference late in the game up close.
No, I feel like we've played a couple of games like that and you've regretted it every time.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's only happened once, but I remember regretting it.
Okay, sorry. Maybe it wasn't a couple. It was definitely that one time.
Yeah.
I remember Cassian being on top of a very tall building and you being like, man, I really wish he could get down.
Yeah. Yes, that definitely happened. Can't confirm.
So
another reason to take ascension cables on him, by the way.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I do think that like ascension cables, particularly if you're like gonna try and utilize like sniper perches, definitely a thing you want on Cassian.
Yeah, I think though, if you're just using him for the sniper, you're not getting the full benefit of what Cassian's bringing to the table, right? So you want to maximize your benefit out of your units.
He's definitely super flexible, which is a huge, reason he's good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Takeaway. Cassian, good. K2, must have.
Yeah, that's a good summary. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just for the people who are a little bit slower like me, I just want to make sure they're caught up.
I think that rounds out our Rebel Commander discussion.
Yeah, I think we hit everybody other than Field Commander Shriv, who we've decided we're going to talk about when we talk about heavies.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean,
so we definitely decided the best and the worst, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not actually sure who the worst is. I think it might be like there's like a bunch down there at the bottom, but I definitely
think there's only two down at the very bottom.
Sure. Yeah. Jyn and Han are definitely like drinking beers back at the bar. Like, why did nobody pick us on our volleyball team or whatever? And like, and Cassian and Mr. Rebel Officer Man are like, out there on the front lines doing the work.
I felt like based on our conversation, that's real accurate. And then in the middle, Lando, Leia, and Luke they just seem situational to what list you're going to build out and what you're looking to do from a list perspective.
Basically, if you have a commander whose name starts with L, they'll probably just okay.
There you go. Triple alliteration there. Lando, Leia, Luke.
Yeah.
I think Lando's sort of a cut above those other two, but we'll see.
I think that's very possible. I do think that like his flaw is, I think he might be the hardest character on this list to play because of the flawed ability.
There's no question
how bad that flaw card can get you.
Potentially, yeah.
And it feels to me really difficult to not just have on by the end of the game.
It's like an unavoidable one.
Right. Like with Anakin's, like if you play super well, at least you have the option of like this card maybe not being on. With Callus's, it kind of doesn't matter. With Lando's, you kind of have to soak it.
Yeah. And at some point in the game, you're gonna have to eat it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jay.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.